Hey Film Boss, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Today we're continuing our series on Who's the Deadliest Slasher, and we're going to talk about today the man-child who has many different names and literally many different faces. That is Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw timeline, and by timeline I mean timelines, because there's a bunch of different iterations of this character, but we're going to lump them all together and see how deadly he is. So without further ado, let's get into the kills. So in the first Texas Chainsaw movie, Leatherface is a sawyer, and a bunch of teens break down in the hot Texas backcountry. They go to this house looking for help, and Kirk breaks in and gets a hammer to the head with an iconic door slam. Kirk's girlfriend Pam goes looking for him and gets put on a meat hook for her troubles. Later we see her in a freezer where we get a jump scare, but that is ultimately her final scene, meaning that we're going to put her on the list as a kill. Disco Stu gets his head crushed, and the final girl's wheelchair-bound brother Franklin gets chainsawed in the middle of the woods. The final girl, Sally Hardestein, then escapes a sadistic murder dinner party and makes it to freedom on the back of a truck. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 opens up with two frat boys being killed while calling into a radio station. The first one gets chainsawed through the head, leading to a car crash, and then the second one just disappears, so I'm going to chalk that up to a Leatherface kill as well. At the time of their deaths, they were prank calling the radio station like I mentioned, so the DJ Stretch decides to play that kill over the airways, leading the Sawyers to show up trying to kill her, which they do not succeed in, but they do kidnap her radio partner, which she goes after him trying to save him. This leads Stretch to an abandoned amusement park where her assistant is beaten by Chop Top with a hammer and then eventually skinned by Leatherface, leading to him bleeding out and dying. The action takes off and a grenade is thrown, killing Leatherface, Dennis Hopper, and two others. So that's the end of Bubba in this story, so he doesn't get any more kills for the rest of the movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, we end up with the Sawyers again, but Viggo Mortensen is here this time. Leather does get two kills early on, with a young girl and her sister a few days later. Leatherface has a daughter who kills the final girl's boyfriend, and Viggo Mortensen is burned alive by Ken Foray, but I don't have much to say about this entry because Leatherface doesn't do a lot of killing, so moving on to the next timeline. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The New Beginning switches out the Sawyers for the Slaughters, and Matthew McConaughey gets two surprising kills in the beginning of the movie, and then Barry gets killed by a hammer from Leatherface, but that's the only kill that Leatherface gets in the entire movie. All the rest were done by Matthew McConaughey. So we'll move on to the next movie. The remake that came out in 2003 was called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it switches out the Sawyers and the Slaughters for the Hewitts. Jessica Biel's boyfriend gets brained in the head with a hammer after breaking and entering, and then his face gets cut off, becoming Leatherface's face. Pepper is the first chainsaw kill of the movie, and then Morgan is bifurcated by a chainsaw while hanging from a chandelier. Aaron J. Beale's character then cuts off Leatherface's arm and does escape, running over R. Lee Ermey, killing him. But in the ending narration, we hear that there were two unknown cops that were killed by Leatherface when they came to the scene, meaning that Leatherface lived on after he got his arm cut off and still was killing to this day. The next film in the timeline is Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning, which still follows the Hewitts, but we jump back in time to figure out their origins. Leatherface's mom dies in childbirth, and Leather grows up working in the slaughterhouse, but decides to cleaver his boss after he is fired, and R. Lee Ermey kills the cops who comes to arrest Leatherface.
Shit, I just killed the whole sheriff's department.
Biker is then thrown onto a chainsaw, which Leatherface starts up and rips through his body. Eric is then tied to a table and killed by Leatherface and becomes Leatherface's first Leatherface. Leatherface then cuts Bailey's throat randomly at the dinner table and then mulches Dean with a chainsaw. The final girl gets away, but Leatherface pops up with a chainsaw from the back seat, jamming it through her chest, causing her to run over two randos alongside the road. And because Leather caused that accident, I will give him credit for those two kills. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D jumps back to the Sawyers and picks up a couple minutes after the first movie ended. It starts with a bunch of the Sawyers being killed and a baby Sawyer being kidnapped who grows up to be Alexandria Daddario. She inherits her grandmother's house in Texas, and they all go there, but there's a hidden Leatherface in the house that makes quick work of a hitchhiker who was casing the place. Kenny is then put on a meat hook and killed with a chainsaw, and then Leatherface cuts the tire of the group's getaway van flipping it, causing the death of Alexander Daddario's cheating boyfriend. Leatherface then enters a carnival where he gets 0 kills. He just throws his chainsaw and runs away. And he does then put the other cheater, Nikki, in a freezer, but he doesn't get to kill for her because after a jump scare, a cop shoots her in the head. After Nikki is dispatched, the cop that killed her is then hatcheted by Leatherface. Jedediah, which is Leatherface's name in this movie, then frees his cousin, who throws him his chainsaw, leading to him cutting off the mayor's arms, with the mayor sliding into a meat grinder. And the movie ends with kind of a stinger kill, with the 2 people who kidnapped Alexander Daddario in the beginning of the movie getting killed when they show up to essentially steal from her at her new mansion, and Leather answers the door. Leatherface is the next movie in the timeline, but it's actually a prequel to the sequel that we just covered, so it's the Sawyers still. It follows a teenage Leatherface and how he became Leatherface. We're led to believe the whole time in this Leatherface origin story that this big boy at the asylum that young Jedediah was sent to is actually supposed to be Leatherface, but spoiler alert, it's not. It's the skinnier, tiny guy named Jackson, so his kills are the ones will count for Leatherface. There's an asylum breakout that's happening, and Lizzie is about to be killed by a violent inmate, and Jackson steps in and kills him before he can kill Lizzie. After a long and violent journey, the big boy that I mentioned gets shot in the head by a cop, which leads to Jackson essentially going crazy and slamming the cop's head in a car door multiple times. Nurse Lizzie and Jackson are then escaping, where Jackson is shot in the face, scarring him, turning him actually into Leatherface. We then get the first chainsaw kill of the movie, which is when Jedediah kills the sheriff, and then he kills our final girl for bad-mouthing the matriarch of the Sawyer clan.
It's a crazy mother!
And Lizzie's face becomes Leatherface's first Leatherface in this timeline. And after all that, we end up in 2022 with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre requel, which follows the original timeline and erases everything that came before except the original film. Sally Hardesty is seen to still be alive 40 years later and watching out for Leatherface, who, after the death of his surrogate mother, goes on a killing spree. Mr. Sawyer, escaping from an ambulance with cops, breaks one of the cops' arms, stabbing him with his own ulna and radius, and then he beats another cop with the butt of the gun, and a nameless girl gets her stomach sliced open. The nameless girl's boyfriend, Dante, is the next one to get killed, followed by the contractor that was helping them get the town that Leatherface was living in renovated, and then the escape bus driver gets his head decapitated and thrown back onto the bus. 21 millennials get killed on the escape bus while they're live streaming, threatening to cancel Leatherface.
Try anything and you cancel, bro.
And then Catherine gets cut in half, where Sally Hardesty actually finally shows up to kill Leatherface using the 2 final girls as bait. Using the final girls as bait really doesn't work well for Sally because she gets lifted in the air with a chainsaw and essentially gets mulched, dying. And the final kill we have of the franchise so far is where Melody gets ripped out of a self-driving car and gets killed right in front of her sister, who is stuck in the self-driving car and can do nothing to help. So by my count, Leatherface as a whole got 64 kills throughout all of his films. He got 9 kills as a Sawyer in the OG timeline, which is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1, 2, and 3. He got 1 kill as a Slaughter in the Next Generation, and he got 13 kills as a Hewitt in the rebooted timeline. In the second Sawyer timeline, which is Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, he got 15 kills. He got a whopping 34 kills in the requel timeline, which is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the requel that came out in 2022. So 3 out of the 5 timelines actually include the original film's counts. With 64 kills per film, that puts him at 7 kills per movie, which puts him right below Ghostface. But if he didn't get that big bust kill in the requel, that would put him about 4-ish kills per movie. So that really bumped his numbers up with that requel. Being in between Freddy and Ghostface isn't a bad place to be, but next week we're going to talk about the sweets for the sweet and see where the Candyman lands. So, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.